Thank you all for coming this evening to learn about the myth and reality of recycling. I'm Sherry Latash, co-founder along with Mary Monday. There's Mary. Of Greener Glenview, a Glenview environmental group dedicated to putting sustainability at the heart of how we live. We would like to thank the Village of Glenview and the Glenview Park District for co-sponsoring tonight's event. Here's how tonight will go. Each member of our expert panel will speak for about 20 minutes. Then we'll take a 2-minute break to stretch. Next, representatives from the Village and Park District will briefly speak. Then we'll begin the Q&A portion of the program. If you have a question for a panelist, write it down on the note card. Hold up your card and it will be collected. If we don't get through all the questions by 8:30, our speakers have agreed to stay and continue the conversation. Before you leave, we hope you'll stop by the tables in the back to view some products from Swank's Sustainability Product Kit. A lot of interesting things back there. First, a few words about why this program is so necessary. Recycling should be one of the simplest things we can do to help protect the environment. Many of us are confused about what to put in our recycling bins. Along with the confusion about recycling, some of us have gotten cynical. Does a lot of our recycling end up in the landfill after all? Are plastics manufacturers just greenwashing by putting recyclable symbols on products they know can't be recycled? Even dedicated recyclers ask themselves, how is it possible after all these years that less than 10% of plastics are recycled? Is it a technology problem, a market problem, an education problem, a lack of will? Have we been bamboozled by industry? What can be done about it? Well, the California Attorney General launched an investigation this spring focusing on the role of the fossil fuel and petrochemical industries in misleading the public about plastics recyclability. Separately, a lawsuit was recently settled against a number of consumer product companies and a national recycler. The settlement advances truth in label packaging and third-party verification that materials claiming to be recyclable are actually being recycled. Tonight you will gain a more complete understanding of the complexities and dynamics of recycling. Our panel will provide a boots-on-the-ground view of recycling reality. They will also describe policy developments that can move the needle on what, how, and who pays for recycling. To set the stage, our first speaker will be Christina Siebert, Executive Director of the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County. And I'd like to introduce Christina. Christina Siebert is the Executive Director for the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, also known as SWANK. She has 20 years of experience in the solid waste and recycling arena, advising both units of local government and private waste companies on planning, policy, program, and contract matters. Christina has led market assessments, economic evaluations, solid waste and recycling plans, and facility development and permitting efforts for all types of waste and recycling facilities. In addition to the extensive experience across the Chicago market and Northern Illinois, she has also worked with communities across the U.S., including many with aggressive diversion goals and progressive environmental policies, such as Los Angeles and Austin, Texas. Since 2005, Christina has served on the board of the Illinois chapter of the Solid Waste Association of North America, and she is certified faculty for SWANA's international training courses. Christina is also the chair of the Illinois Electronics Recycling Task Force, and along with Mary Ellen, co-authored the Recycling Works Toolkit. Please give a round of applause to Christina.
Sherry. Can everyone hear me here? The microphone up. Thank you for all being out here tonight. Sound coming through okay? I'm going to spend a little time talking about who Swank is, just to set a little bit of stage. I'm going to talk a little more about things that are a little more waste related than recycling, because that's part of the mission of the agency. And it's a reality that along with recycling, we still do have waste. As best as we do our recycling, we are going to have waste for some period into the future. So the Solid Waste Agency is a municipal joint action agency. We were formed in 1988, consisting of 23 member communities, with the mission of providing long-term, cost-effective, environmentally sound collection, transport, and disposal of waste, as well as to divert the volume of waste and toxicity of waste that we can through different reuse, recovery, and recycling type programs. We have a board of directors that oversees all of our operations. We are governed by the board of directors. Each member community has one representative that votes on that committee, and we are equal voting members all across, regardless of the size of the community. The 23 members are shown here on the slide. We stretch all the way from Barrington on the west to the communities along the lake on the east. So being here tonight, we're kind of in the middle to east central portion of the membership, and have a couple of pockets right around us here that aren't part of the membership, Northbrook and Des Plaines, little pockets that it had been part of the discussion originally, and for various reasons, mostly financial, decided not to join in with the agency in '88 when it was formed. So one of the main things that the agency does is that first part of our mission, that's providing the cost-effective waste disposal for our 800,000 members, 800,000 residents. We do that through project use agreements that each community signed and committed their waste to their residential waste to our transfer station through 2031. So we have a period of more than 40 years that waste was obligated to be handled through our facility, and we contract with an operator, Groot Industries, who is here tonight to talk on the recycling side, but they also operate our transfer station and provide collection in about half of our member communities also for all of the residential services. We do also assist our member communities to negotiate their solid waste contracts, so we serve as a extension of staff for each of the different members, so that each individual community doesn't have to be expert in all things waste and recycling. They can look to our staff to fill that void, because contracts only come up every 5 years or so, and it's hard to have municipal staff be well-versed in what all the different competitive considerations are. Through our contract, what it means is that the towns like Glenview, when you go out to get a residential waste hauler, you don't need to worry about where that waste is going to go. You know it's going to the Glenview transfer station, and all of the haulers within the market know that. They don't have to have a facility available to them. That increases your access to competition, and competition is good. It gets innovative service. It gets cost-effective service. The other communities around our membership who aren't members of SWANK send their waste to transfer stations just like we do, except that the transfer stations they go to are probably decided based on who their hauler is. All of the major haulers that operate in this marketplace have facilities, so that's Waste Management, Lakeshore Recycling Services, Flood Brothers, Republic Services. Each of them have their own facilities, and they have their own landfills. So by being a member of SWANK, our communities get the buying power of all of the communities around them to get a cost-effective disposal rate. That cost-effective disposal rate is important because it helps to support a lot of the recycling activities that we undertake. And before we get there, we'll talk a little bit about the transfer station. It opened in 1994. We had originally planned to have a network of transfer stations and a landfill. Things changed, various reasons and long story, but we have one transfer station, generally centrally located in Des Plaines, and the waste that is brought to our transfer station gets hauled to a landfill in Rockford that is also owned by Waste Connections, the same company that owns Groot, for disposal. We use transfer stations because we can consolidate garbage into a smaller, into one truck. So we take what's in 3 garbage trucks and put it into one transfer trailer. Really saves on road wear and tear, on mileage. And those trucks that are collecting at your curb are really meant to collect at the curb. They're not meant to drive on landfills. it's great that we have this access to modern technology at the transfer station and landfill. And we don't think of landfills as being high technology, but they kind of are. That allows us to manage materials safely. And we could just keep landfilling everything that we wanted. In fact, it would be a little bit cheaper to do so. Our disposal rate this year is $50 per ton versus a recycling processing cost just to process a ton of recycling is $80 a ton. So we don't recycle necessarily because of the economics of it. There are a lot of other environmental reasons that we look to do that, and we have to be able to cover that processing cost. But things that Mary is going to talk about on contamination and some things that you'll hear from Javier about the operations of the facility really allow residents to have an impact on what it takes to process material. The cleaner that the stream is and the better that we prepare our materials, the less costly that it is to process them. In terms of numbers, last year we sent 258,000 tons from our residents to landfill disposal. By comparison, we recycled about 71,000 tons. So we have a recycling rate around 22% across our membership. Glenview actually has a little bit higher performance than that, more like 29%. And that's just your recycling. You get additional diversion that comes from your yard waste that goes to a compost facility. We don't calculate that into our recycling rate. On a national level, based on EPA data from 2018, which was the most recent they have available, the national recycling rate is more like 19%. So less than what we're achieving. So we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit, but obviously we have a long ways to go if we want to hit some broader goals, like more like 50% recycling that our state has set as a target number. With the recycling that we collect, that goes to a material recovery facility or a MRF for processing. From this area, a lot of the material goes to Groot's MRF in Elk Grove, which Javier will talk about. But there are a number of other MRFs that are available from other operators. So we get good competition and access to recycling within this market, which is a benefit because that means we have options in the future for more recycling access to capacity. We also have SWANK operates its recycling incentive program as part of our transfer station contract, where 15 of our communities have opted in to participate in that. And those communities can tip their recycling at the MRF at no cost. And when the market value of material is greater than what it costs to process it, then they get a rebate on that. They get money back based on their recycling. Glenview does participate in that program. And over the past year or so, it's been about $20 per ton that's come back to the members because of what they were able to recycle. So the more we can recycle and the more that markets can stay strong, the better that we will see the economic performance of recycling looking. So on the slide here, we have the waste hierarchy. You may have seen this in different forms before. Kind of also looks like the food pyramid, where we go from at the top, the most desirable option to, and what we would like to see most material be managed through, to the least desirable option. And you see that reduce and reuse are both on the top of that piece there. And nothing that I've talked about that we do as an agency covers reduce and reuse yet, but it is something that is most preferred. We'd really like to see people divert material or not create it in the first place and give it new life. Next comes recycling and composting, followed by energy recovery and landfill disposal. And landfill disposal, while it's the least preferred option, it is the largest method of managing material out of this region. Couple things that the agency sponsors for all of our member communities and they can participate in. We provide electronics collection program that runs every week, and we also do one-day collections throughout the summer. We have document shredding events. We do mercury thermometer and mercury device collection, CFLs and fluorescent tube collection, medications and sharps, holiday lights and batteries. And those are programs that have been in place for a long time for our members. And as a result of these programs, we have really stimulated some other activity at the state level to do more to provide a structure for the recovery of those materials that doesn't rely so much on local communities or on agencies like ours to provide that service. Jake is going to talk some more about the specific programs that Glenview provides, but each of these are available to each of the members to be able to host. So a couple things then on other roles that we play and that I get pretty active in are the policy and planning side. We do agency level planning. So we have a solid waste plan that we developed in 2014. In fact, before I was with the agency, I was the one that drafted it as the consultant to the agency at that time. And that provides us some guiding policy for the programs that we conduct and our situation within the marketplace. And last year we completed a strategic planning process that's a little more internal looking and thinking about the near term and long term goals of the agency. So just like any other business, we're being responsible for thinking about how we can best serve our membership, our constituents going forward. As a staff, we also participate in a number of state organizations, most of which have a corresponding national organization that we're also affiliated with. So we were founding members of the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition in 2012, participate in the Illinois County Solid Waste Management Association, SWANA, Illinois Recycling Association, the Product Stewardship Council, just to name a few. And finally, on the kind of the more implementation side of program planning, we get involved in task forces. The state of Illinois really likes its task forces, and they are looking for participation often on ways to study recycling and advance it further. So we've been part of a task force in 2015 and again last year to look at materials management and make recommendations for the state as a whole, again, to take that bigger picture involvement and be able to better drive the programs we can offer with backing of the state in a more consolidated and holistic approach. In that materials management advisory committee process, we set a new state recycling goal of 50% recycling by 2035. And one of the things that we identified through that was, well, we think the state might be at 37% recycling. At least that's what IEPA thinks that we're at. But the data is really hard to come by. We as an agency have good data on what our members are doing. We know what's coming from our residents. We track that very closely. But at a more regional and state level, the data collection really isn't as sound as we would like it to be. So being able to make policy decisions without quality data was a problem for us through this MAC process. So we've identified a lot of infrastructure needs and funding needs that need to be filled by IEPA. And this year they have some money in their budget to start making some inroads into developing a statewide education plan and doing other things to really bring up the knowledge around recycling. Finally, we do work on legislation. So electronics recycling was something that the agency started doing in 1999, long before anybody really required it or thought about what the long-range vision might be. The agency got in front of it and said, hey, we're going to step out and we're going to provide recovery of these materials that are toxic and that have a better place than in the landfill. And now we have a landfill ban in Illinois for electronics. And I think that the work that the agency has done over the years to really build up a collection network and build up an awareness with our residents has led to a lot of success and created a lot of the model for developing that statewide legislation. Just this year, in fact, just a couple weeks ago, there was a pharmaceutical bill that was signed that will require producers of pharmaceuticals to take back those materials through a take-back program that they have yet to define. They need to develop a plan for that. And that'll fully roll out in 2024. So one of the programs we provide is medication collection. We may or may not be a participant in that in the future, depending on what that manufacturer program looks like. But all of these different pieces of legislation are things that we refer to as extended producer responsibility, or EPR. EPR basically shifts the responsibility for managing materials from the consumer or from the local government or from the waste hauler at the time of discard. It shifts it back to the producer that created it in the first place. And they're responsible then in a full EPR program for providing the collection, the processing, and the proper management of that material. They also then fund all of those elements, which is a savings back to the local governments and a benefit to the haulers. We are right now working on packaging and paper product EPR legislation, which is very broad in its application. It captures basically all of the materials that go in our curbside recycling carts now. It would apply to anything that is a paper product, so any cardboard, any type of mixed paper. It would also apply to any food container, So all of those things that we target for the recycle cart are going to, under this law, be the responsibility of the producers to fund the recovery and recycling of. They will have to set a goal for themselves, which hits at a minimum our state recycling threshold of 50%. They're also going to have to provide education around that. And they're going to have to provide access to recycling. We have a lot of areas of the state that are not as fortunate as we are in this area. They don't have curbside recycling. They maybe don't even have drop-off recycling. And it'll require them to provide access for that. All of that will reduce the cost to local governments because the recycling bill no longer is their responsibility. It's now the producer's responsibility. It allows us as consumers to make informed decisions around what products we purchase for those that are most sustainably packaged and demanding more sustainability in the packaging that we see. The Amazon box that has the cardboard box inside of it that could have just been shipped as a cardboard box is one example, or the toothpaste that comes in the tube and then the box around it. Do we need that level of packaging? Sometimes yes, but sometimes we don't. So EPR is really designed to get the producers to think about how they are producing their product and to design for that end management and recyclability. So with that, I would just say policies are good as a guidepost. Best laid plans mean a lot, but we have to really put our money where our mouth is, I guess, mouth where, get that expression correct. And we have to be able to implement all these things. And so there is a lot that as residents or as groups like Greener Glenview that you can do to improve on our wasting culture. So recycling is one component of that. I think I'll turn it over to Mary at this point to talk about the dilemma with recycling. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. So, as Christina said, our next speaker is going to be Mary Allen. Mary Allen is the Recycling and Education Director for the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, also known as SWANK. Mary began her tenure with SWANK in 1995 and is responsible for the development and administration of member community special material programs, one-day events, permanent collections, school programs, public outreach, and educational resources. Mary has served on a variety of Illinois councils and professional boards, is a founding member of the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, and leads the coalition's monthly meetings. Additionally, she contributed to the Food Waste Reduction Toolkit for K-12 Illinois schools as part of the Wasted Food Action Alliance in 2020. As a participant with the Illinois Task Force for Recycling Contamination Solutions, Mary has written and produced several videos, including one on electronics recycling and recyclables contamination. She co-produced the Recycling Works Toolkit and conducted training workshops statewide for the Illinois Recycling Association. Additionally, and not surprising, after all we've heard, Mary has received national, state, and local recognition for her leadership, most recently the Sustainability Award from Glenview's Environment and Natural Resources Commission in the category of education and outreach. Mary has a Bachelor of Science degree in teaching from Florida State University and a LEED Green Associate credential from the U.S. Green Building Council. Please welcome Mary Allen.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Sherry. And I'm not going to hop it. If I fall. Okay, let me get situated here. You have your seat belts fastened? I've got lots to say in 20 minutes. So, Recycling has been nothing but an evolution. Raise your hand if you're still using a dial phone at home. Why not? Technology changes. Well, technology's been a big part of recycling's change as well. So back in the early 90s, when curbside recycling came to being in the Swank region and other communities, we were given an 18-gallon cart that was open, and everything had to go in that except we had to bag paper. We needed to take labels off of glass bottles and put them separate. And our service provider would come to the cart, and they would hold that 18-gallon bin, and they would hand sort at the truck. Lots have changed, right? So then in the then in the early 2000s, it was thought by the industry, let's make things easier for the consumer. So the cart, as you see on either side, the 65-gallon, 95-gallon, or 35, whatever a resident wanted, was rolled out literally. It had wheels. It was a larger footprint than the 18-gallon bin. It actually took up the space of two 18-gallon bins. And it had a lid, so the materials would stay dry when it either snowed or rained, and materials weren't blowing all over the neighborhood. It just seemed like a better way as technology changed. So when the recycling truck came to comes to our neighborhoods now, it's got an arm ergodynamically that picks up the cart and shakes it into the truck and puts it back down. So group can talk to liability and workers' compensation, because there used to be a lot of injuries. It used to be dangerous. If you'd cut doing the glass, you cut your hand. There was just numerous reasons that this made it easier for the consumer and more streamlined, because all the materials could go in the cart instead of having to do a dual or triple sort. Labels no longer have to come off of bottles. That's been figured out in reprocessing. And it just seems like it's easier. So here we go on our way with our carts, putting materials, cans and bottles, paper, plastics, in the cart. Well, it wasn't really until 2018 that we found out about 70% of what we were putting in our recycling cart was being shipped in a cargo container to either China or a third world country. And it was helping with their industrial revolutions and being feedstock, except China finally put the kibosh on it, because so much of in the recycling cart was garbage that they were having to deal with on their end, that they didn't want it anymore. There were low-grade materials coming in, there were safety issues, and that's when things have changed. So in the early 90s, we could put plastic bottles, metal cans, paper, and cardboard in our bin. Not much has changed, but packaging has. And because so much of the newfangled, sometimes lower carbon footprint material, flexible packaging was being shipped overseas, our recyclers didn't have to be responsible here domestically for sorting and having to find markets for some of those materials. So now that we know that we own our materials, when our hauler picks them up, or when our recycler picks them up, they have to deal with them. And some of the companies have been charging extra money because there's been such a high level of contamination, meaning there's materials in the cart that are not wanted or can't be processed or don't have a market for them, and they're having to be landfilled, which causes increases costs. So that's a whole plethora of reasons why where we were, where we are, and where we're going moving forward. And thankfully, raising education levels from the recycler, from community, from Swank, and working with our member communities to get the latest and the greatest information in front of you, and however many outlets we have to do it. Because we know not one thing is serves everybody. So recycling does matter. And here are all the whys. There are markets. It's a very solid foundation industry, like commodities, for those of you that are on the stock market, although don't look at your portfolios right now, right? So you know what goes up comes down. It's just the way commodities go in recycling. Recyclables are commodities. So recyclers need a very few, a select quality number of our consumer recycling, not everything. And what it does is it serves as feedstock to make new materials, new products, instead of having to extract raw resources. There's energy savings and water savings. Certainly, it's a piece of the solution. As Christina said, it is not the silver bullet. It is not the end all. And it's about recycling to achieve an environmental outcome, not just for the sake of recycling, that we need to keep in mind. So bagged recycling results in being landfilled. So do not bag your recycling if you want it to have a chance to be recycled and made into new product. And again, contamination costs money because usually the consumer ends up paying for losses. This is the short list of what can be recycled in your curbside cart. It's not much. Very few items are at the curb. You can see glass jars and bottles that are related to food and beverage only. The metal caps need to be at least 3 inches or larger so they don't fall through the machinery. We have also plastics bottles. Leave the caps on and don't crush. That's different than in the early 90s where we crushed everything so we would have enough room for more materials. And the lids had to be thrown away because the recyclers couldn't deal with the different plastic. That's all changed. They need the lids back on the bottles in the jugs, like a milk jug, a laundry detergent jug. And then things like tubs, yogurt containers, cottage cheese containers, maybe sour cream, and jars. There's different products, food products that come in jars. You don't see any single-use cups up here. You don't see straws. You don't see lids. You don't see takeout containers, right? They're all garbage right now. We're working towards a circularity that I'll be talking about to try and find ways to recycle and keep the lower grade plastics. And that is really going to come with the EPR legislation that is slated to be passed and hopefully implemented by 2026. I believe I saw it today. Christina, Javier, and I were at the same meeting earlier. So just because something's made from glass, paper, metal, plastics, doesn't mean that it can be recycled in your curb. Don't rely on the numbers. You know, the little chasing arrow with the numbers 1 through 7, those are very misguiding. Just because something says it can be recycled doesn't mean it can go in your cart. The true way to find out is to look on Swank's website, look on Glenview's website, give Groot a call. And between the three of us, you'll get the answer to what really can be recycled in your cart. Don't listen to manufacturers at this time. They're making things and they're telling you it can be recycled. It ain't true always. So when in doubt, throw it out. This is a slide of single-use plastic. My voice is going, I'm sorry. I've been talking too much, not just tonight. So single-use plastics or paper are garbage right now. It's basically flex packaging, takeout containers, coffee cups. That's a slide of garbage. So if you're putting any of these things in your recycling bin, please stop. In the presentation today by Resource Management, who processes a lot of materials from the Chicagoland area at the materials recovery facility down in South Chicago, he said that generally speaking, there are about 29 different plastic products. And out of 29 products, the best MRF can sort about 4. That's the reality of plastics. So when you see the Atlantic article that I sent to Sherry that says we're recycling about 6%, That's about what is being recycled out of your cart that's plastic, but a lot of it is going to the landfill. So I really encourage you to empty, rinse, clean out everything you put in your bin, and make sure, I have the recycling guidelines up on the table if you didn't get them ahead of time. There's a flyer on one side for the 4 categories, and the other side is more of a do list, a yes list, and a don't list. And many of those don't lists, as Christina pointed out, there are programs for many of the materials that aren't allowed to go in your cart. You just have to take them to a different location. And the agency provides lots of information on our website. So plastics and litter impacts not only our ecosystems, but the health of us, our families, our pets. It's really important as a consumer to do your research and understand the impacts of some of the plastics as you heat them up and what can happen to your food. And when you eat that food, some of the negative health effects that you can have. Plastics are everywhere. They're ubiquitous, and they never go away. They don't degrade. When you see something that says will compost will degrade in 1,000 years, it's not true. It never goes away. What happens is it becomes tinier and tinier and tinier, and the tinier it gets, those little fibers and microplastics. Microfibers are from our clothing in the washing machine. They're going into the bellies of animals and even our food chain. It kind of sounds abysmal, and it is. So as consumers, do your best to look at finding reusables instead of one-time use. Get out the good china for your parties. Don't save it. Your children don't want it. I've already been told. Mom, I don't want that. So be sure you use it a lot. There are things that we can do to look at minimal packaging, taking bags to stores. Look at the zero waste big picture and start a step at a time. Do one new thing and nail it. And then when you have that as your new normal, pick up another something to do that prevents waste, minimizes resources being used and wasted. So wish cycling is when you put something in your cart that doesn't go there. It's also called contamination. So wish cycling is putting materials in the cart and hoping they get recycled. It's dangerous, it's a health hazard. The tanglers are a pain in the machine, not the word I really wanted to use, and they stink. So let's try the video to see if it works.
Welcome to Groot's Materials Recovery Facility. Each day, loads of recyclables from homes and businesses are brought here for sorting. Once materials are sorted and baled, they are sold to companies to make new products. Utilizing recycled materials instead of extracting raw materials from our earth conserves resources and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. However, wish cycling, or putting materials in your recycling cart that can't be processed, causes contamination. Just because something is made from plastic, glass, paper, or metal doesn't mean it can be recycled in your cart. It is important to know what materials are accepted and those that aren't, and why. Wish cycling is dangerous. Never put any of these items in your recycling cart. Lithium batteries, electronics, propane tanks, and non-emptied aerosol cans, because they can explode and cause fires, which can harm sanitation workers and the facility. Wish cycling is a health hazard. Medical and biological wastes, like masks, PPE, and needles, are a health hazard for sanitation workers. Put masks and other personal protective equipment in the garbage cart and look for special drop-off locations or programs for the other items. Wish cycling is a pain in the machine. Never put any of these materials in your recycling cart. Plastic bags, film wrap, string lights, cords, or hoses. These are tanglers, which wrap around sorting equipment and can be dangerous for sanitation workers to cut out. Look for special recycling drop-off locations for these items or place them in your garbage cart. Wish cycling stinks. Never put these items in your recycling cart. Food, liquids, dirty diapers, and general garbage because they contaminate loads of good recycling. Materials must be empty and clean. No liquid, food, or organic matter. Wish cycling costs you money. When unacceptable items are put in your recycling cart, recycling companies must pay for the waste to be landfilled, a cost the consumer will end up paying. Be in the know before you throw.
So how do we help people better? Cart tagging is about being on the street with people who are visually inspecting carts, and that's something that Swank's intern, her name is Cece, and I did during the month of May. Barrington, Evanston, and Mount Prospect all raised their hand to say that they were interested in doing this pilot program with us. So for every recycling day in the month of May, we were on the street before the recycling trucks came to pick up the materials. And what we did, we had tags. We sent the recycling guidelines with a letter about the program to designated areas in each community before we even started. So they had a heads up that we were going to be there, not policing, not enforcing, just simply taking a visual look inside their cart and leaving them information. If we found that they had things in the cart that didn't belong there, we were going to leave them an oops tag and mark the things that they had in their cart according to the oops tag. If they did everything right, if materials were loose, if they were clean, if they were the acceptable materials, then they got a thank you tag. So we did that, and we saw some good results. We saw some trends. We saw more thank you notes going up and oops tags going down. We saw less bagged recycling and less plastic and film, which was the biggest part of what was collected in contamination in the 4 weeks that we did that. We'll be writing a report and sending it to our board of directors probably by next month. And all of our municipalities will have a copy of it as well. Something that the reality of being at the cart is truth. My oops tag didn't really nail down a large percentage of contamination that we saw. We had bulky items. We had foam. We had electronics and batteries. Batteries are almost impossible to find unless you're going to tip it out because they probably go to the bottom. But what we found instead, a ton of single-use stuff. Pizza boxes with slimed oil, cheese, and even pepperoni. You know, a lot of single-use plates and napkins and cups. This is all cups and film wrap and bags. We even had some construction debris here. Dirty Starbucks cup. Cigarette butts. Really? A tire? Now, tires have to be recycled, but not in the recycling cart. You have to take them somewhere and you have to pay money, like between $3 and $5. And I think there's a really great drop-off for gasoline, oil, antifreeze, and tires right here in Glenview. The name escapes me at the moment. This is just a metal bar. All this recycling was great, but then you had the metal shelving. So this was just some of the contamination. So I've already started redesigning my oops tag to include more of the single-use items, kind of doing categories, and also doing some more explaining, some more education. I felt like the back of the tag each had don't bag because that was our #1 ask, but it wasn't enough education because some people were already not bagging. So there's opportunity out there to communicate with the residents. We got some really nice feedback from a survey that we asked them to take by leaving a little card on the last tag that we gave them the 4th week. So I'm looking forward. Skokie is starting their own. Glencoe is interested in maybe starting in September. Park Ridge has raised their hand, and maybe Morton Grove. And I think this is something that all of our communities should be doing because residents came out to talk to us. And after being away from everyone for 2 years. It was a wonderful connection. And they had questions, and they really wanted to do better, and they wanted to know. Once they saw that it was an old lady at their curb, I didn't look like the policeman. There was nothing to be afraid of. And we talked, and that's so important. You being here tonight is very important, to learn more and then to share what you know. So this is just an example of take inventory at home, at your business, your place of work, here in the community. I live in Park Ridge, and I pass these 2 carts all the time when I'm walking uptown. You need to label the carts. People need to know what you want. If not, in that garbage cart, you're going to get 50% recycling, and in the recycling, you'll probably get 50% garbage. It just goes without saying. So keep it simple. This is a campaign Wilmette is just doing in their downtown area that has just been refurbished. In their business district, they bought these receptacles, and on it, it's just bottles and cans. Go for quality, not quantity. It's very simple. Is it a bottle? Recycle it. Is it a can? Recycle it. Is this a single-use cup? Throw it away. It just helps not to have such a big menu of stuff to worry about and get the quality stuff. I've also been working with a New Trier High School student who just graduated, is going after her Girl Scout Award, her Gold Award, and she's helping Wilmette with beach signs for their receptacles. Again, cans and bottles, no food, no liquid. I think the no food, no liquid is very important. Without saying too much, circularity is where we need to be. We've extracted materials. We're making new products. Those materials need to be put back into making more products to reduce waste. William McDonough and Michael Brongart are 2 pioneers in sustainability. And from the book, The Upcycle, this is the way to enter into sustainability. To eliminate the concept of waste, and not to minimize, or just don't minimize, but optimize the nutrients that we have, whether they're organic or technical, to find a way to reuse them again. Think of the next use for materials, not the end of life, and being less bad is not good. A little bit of mercury is better than a lot of mercury, but mercury still is not good for the environment. So the idea is clean in, clean out. So we need to knock off some of these chemicals that are harming the water, our environment, our food, and us in our environment, and look for alternatives and start putting our money as a consumer in that direction. There are many groups that are working towards circularity. There are a lot of industry up there in these stakeholder groups. The plastic companies, the petrochemical companies foresee the electric car cutting into their revenue. That is truth. And they don't like to lose money. They're vamping up plastic production 40% by 2030. Is what the industry is saying. And they want to feel not bad about it, so they are trying to find ways to recycle it. It's best not to make waste in the first place through reduce and reuse, because recycling is good, but not making it is even better. So when somebody tells you, but it's recyclable, please always keep that in mind. Not making it the waste is even better. But at least there's some attempt to look TerraCycle, even though they came under fire from California. Truth in labeling is really helping the nation right now. Transparency is where we need to be. What's in this product? What's it made from? How many of you put lotion on your bodies? You know, we have sunscreens. Check out the environmental working groups, third-party testing for sunscreen. Because not all the chemicals in sunscreen are good for us. And what's the largest organ on our body? Our skin. So there are some good things that have come out of discussions about transparency. Chemical recycling is coming to be taking some of the plastics and making it into fuel. the lower grade plastics that we can't make back into consumer products. That's been planned. It's a thing, it's a solution, and I'm not to say that it's not recycling, but it's not traditional recycling. And lastly, I have to put a plug in for compost, because reducing food waste is even better than composting. So find ways to buy less, buy from local, buy food that is not heavily packaged, and eat what you buy so you're wasting less. And then if you have scraps after you've eaten, composting is a great thing to do. You can do in your backyard. You can also do it in your ride-along cart with Groot. It's basically fruits and vegetables. It's kind of limited, as is backyard. The agency Swank has a lot of composting information, but so does the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. I helped develop their composting sites with worm composting, bokashi, and backyard. So it's IllinoisCompost.org. I brought a couple cards with me tonight over there. So check it out if you're interested. Christina and I just got a new worm bin in our office. They are the easiest things to have. They're quiet. They eat anything that you give them. And they don't like to be bothered, much like teenagers. And they eat our food scraps. And we're able to use that compost, what they call the worm poop, when we're doing plantings at our house. We take turns sharing the compost as we harvest it. So it's also a wonderful teaching opportunity for children. Please visit the agency's website at swank.org, because there's tons of information. We have a newsletter you can sign up for, a reuse and recycling directory that you can find outlets for things that can't go in your recycling cart that you know that have reusability or need to safely be disposed of. And thank you so much for not only doing your part, but sharing your knowledge and being here tonight.
What's wrong with this picture? Not everything can be recycled at the curb. In Illinois, recycling can be easy if you follow some simple steps. First of all, do not put recyclables in a plastic bag. Leave materials loose in the cart. All items need to be empty and clean. No food or liquid. Then, know what materials are accepted in your recycling program. Just ask the local authority. Here are some guidelines to follow statewide. Metal. Steel and aluminum cans and even foil can be recycled. Paper, newspaper, office paper, magazines, and flattened cardboard also can be recycled. Glass. Bottles and jars, all colors, can be recycled. Plastic. Bottles, caps on preferred, tubs, jugs, and jars can be recycled. Cartons. Make sure to ask your local authority before you recycle your carton. No tanglers, such as holiday lights, garden hoses, and hangers. No plastic bags. Recycle your plastic bag at a local retail store. No textiles or shoes. Donate instead. No explosives, needles, or bulky items. No food or diapers. Want to know more? Visit the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency's interactive curbside recycling website, or contact your local recycling coordinator.
It's almost time to stretch, but we have one more speaker first, and you will have wondered what this was all about when you sat down. There was something on your chair. This is a card for you to write down your questions, unless you have a photographic, earpiece. I guess that's the wrong way to say it, but maybe you have understood and digested every single thing that was said and have no questions. That would be very strange. Lots of information here. If you have questions, write them down, hold them up. We will circulate through the room and pick them up and use them in our Q&A time. So our next speaker from Groot is Javier Erazo. He is the district manager at Waste Connections, the parent corporation of Groot Materials Recycling Facility, also known as a MRF. His journey through the recycling industry began more than 17 years ago. After graduating from high school, he took a summer job as a manual laborer at the Groot MRF in Elk Grove Village. Working his way through various departments and up the ranks, he has experienced the evolution and innovation in the collection and processing of all kinds of recyclable materials. Please welcome Javier.
I also had a video, but we're going to skip that. Well, I am just going to touch on the recycling facility. So touch on a lot of the stuff that Mary's already gone over and the impact of what she mentioned today to our production line and to our manual sorters and just the system overall. I also want to touch on the current markets, the equipment that we have, its limitations, the challenges that we are enduring due to the contamination, due to fires. But first of all, I'm going to show you and walk you through the process of what it is that our system does. So a MRF, a material recovery facility, separates, bales, processes that material, and then sells it to different end users. The first material that gets recovered from that stream is going to be the glass. It is going to be through a sorting screen, going to be filtered out of the stream first. And we do that because glass is very abrasive and can damage the rest of the equipment. Therefore, we recover it on the front end. It runs on a separate line, and it stays away from the rest of the recyclables, also reducing contamination. In this glass bottle, the picture is a little bit small, but one of the things that Mary touched on earlier was size of the plastic caps being smaller, or any plastic smaller than 3 inches. What ends up happening is that material gets filtered through those screens and ends up in that glass pile, contaminating that commodity there. And potentially that is going to either get landfilled, or when it gets processed, it's going to be burnt off. Shredded paper is another thing that we run into and we find in our glass pile. There's a big misconception that if you bag your shredded paper, you can put it in your curbside recycling, and that's not true. That bag, if it makes it through the transit process, if it doesn't get damaged by the garbage truck, it's going to get, the sorting screens are just going to tear it apart. That material just floats all over the facility. Sherry and Mary were there, and they saw it just floating everywhere. And it ends up in the glass pile as well. After the glass has been removed, a large metal star-shaped screens launch the cardboard out of the larger pieces of cardboard out of the mixed paper stream. The mixed paper stream then flows through those spacings, and similar to those screens that you saw on that image with the film that was wrapped on there, all those tanglers, hoses, the bags, the Christmas lights. Not only is it dangerous because our folks have to go in there, as Mary explained, 3 to 4 times a day, sometimes 8 to 10, depending on the contamination rate of that material. It's dangerous because we have to go and cut that material out of the screens. Every time that we have to cut that material out of the screens, we have to shut down the entire system. We have to go through a lockout, tagout process where it puts our folks at risk every time they're jumping into the equipment. If those steps aren't followed correctly, the system could turn on and those folks can get hurt. And then on top of that, when you're cutting out, because you have to literally go in there with a utility knife to cut off that film, that grocery bags, the shrink wrap out of the stream, and sometimes there's wiring underneath. There's the Christmas lights have wiring underneath. When you go to cut that, the blade skips, and then the employee ends up cutting themselves, which is just a nightmare. So after the mixed paper falls through, then comes the separation between the mixed paper, the fibers, and the containers. The first container that gets recovered is going to be the tin cans or various metallic object. They get picked up by a magnet, and then gets pulled out of the stream and then dumped into its designated bunker. After that, the plastic recycling portion or the containers are then sorted through. They go through optical sorters. The optical sorters, as you'll see on a slide further down, they recognize the material because they have stored images of each item that we have programmed it to capture. Once it recognizes, for instance, the mixed color, which are your detergent bottles, a blast of air will shoot it onto its appropriate sorting line. Once the detergent bottles have been ejected, then come the HD Natural, which are your milk jugs, your number 2 plastics. So both grades are number 2 plastics, but by separating those 2 grades by color and natural, you're able to get a higher rate for that material. And also, the natural does not contain any pigment, and the color does. So that when those 2 materials get blended, then the natural can no longer be turned into a milk jug. Then after that, it's our aluminum. A reverse magnet called an eddy current will repel that material, any material that isn't metallic, onto a belt and let the rest of the plastic and the other recyclables flow through underneath. And then our number 1 plastics, which are our water bottles, our PET. And then lastly, number 5 plastics, polypropylene, are ejected out of the stream. In that grade is sort of a mix plastic grade. 50% to 60% of it is number 5 plastics, but other plastics that inadvertently make it into the stream that are labeled 3 through 7 end up in that stream as well. Facility statistics. So Groot employs a total of almost 80 full-time staff, so 40 employees per shift. That includes manual sorters, operators, forklift operators, baler operators, and mechanics that maintain the equipment. We operate 2 10-hour shifts, Monday through Friday, and our system has the capability to process 25 tons per hour, which means in a single shift, you can process 250 tons. Between both those shifts, you can process up to 500 per day. So on a monthly basis, we recover 3,000 tons of paper, mixed paper, 2,500 tons of cardboard, 300 glass, well, that's a typo, that should be 1,300, 500 plastics, and that's a combination of the 4 grades that I spoke about earlier, and then aluminum, 100 tons, and metal, including the 10 cans, 200 tons. So as you can see, paper makes up and cardboard make up the biggest portion of what we recovered and what we ship out and sell to an end user. Operational impediments. As I spoke earlier, fires are becoming a huge hazard at our facilities, and not only our facilities, to our truck drivers as well, because these fires sometimes start and on the way to our facilities, and often first responders have to go out on the road and fight these fires near busy roadways, in high traffic areas, putting both the firefighters and our drivers at risk. If for whatever reason they make it to the facility, then it puts our employees, firefighters who come out to respond to the fire, and bystanders in a hazardous situation as well. These fires are often caused, or more typically caused, by the lithium batteries that we were talking about earlier, and they come in mobile devices that were inadvertently thrown into the stream, such as cell phones, laptops, tablets. They come in articles as small as greeting cards with the animation or audio on there. The way that these fires start is when our wheel loaders or our equipment drive over these batteries, they explode, and obviously there's 500 to 600 tons of plastic fiber in that pile that is very highly flammable, and that can get out of hand within 5 minutes. You can lose a facility. And on May of last year, 2021, we lost a MRF in Plainfield due to what we suspect was a lithium battery. It was buried underneath a good 10 to 12 feet of containers. The battery, we suspect, was either faulty or overheated. It doesn't take much for them to explode. Exploded in the bin. When we noticed it, we thought it was just a couple of spot fires on the top of that bunker. We put it out, but within seconds, especially because it was a warm day and we had our overhead doors open, the wind just spread that fire throughout the facility, and within 5 minutes we lost control of that fire. We had to evacuate. The fire department came out and they fought that for hours, and then after that they were still coming out every day for a good week. They would come out, they'd extinguish the baled material, they'd leave for a couple hours, and then it would reignite. So they did that for a good week. So it's a huge hazard. Equipment shutdowns. Equipment shutdowns come mainly from the film, the tanglers that we spoke about earlier that wrap up, but also inadvertently the plastics that are labeled recyclable but shouldn't be, or are plastic objects that people think or wish they were recyclables, and they throw them into their bins, such as we've gotten anything from like play sets, slides, those jam up in the screens, or they damage our optical sorters and our robotic sorters, and sometimes that shutdown can be longer than 15 minutes to unjam. Sometimes it can be a day or two, depending on how much of a damage it's done to the equipment. Sometimes most of those repairs we try to do in-house, but sometimes it requires a specialist to come out, and sometimes those parts aren't readily available, so we'll have to wait a day or two until those parts come in. Health hazards, as Mary spoke earlier, we get sharps, needles, and there's a human aspect to what we're doing there, where manual sorters are handling this material. We've had in the past our manual sorters get pricked by these needles. They have to go to the clinic, and it's a 3-4 month ordeal where they have to go for follow-ups. It's not like you just got pricked and you get to go home, put a Band-Aid on it. You have to go back there several times, follow-ups, and you never know what's in that stream or in those needles. Current markets for recyclables. Which materials are capable of being recycled is a function of separation technology. So back to what I was talking about, just because something is, or what Mary also touched on, was just because something's plastic, metal, paper, or labeled recyclable does not mean that it can go in your curbside recycling bin. our technology, our equipment is limited. Size and shape play a big part, like I mentioned earlier. A container smaller than 3 inches or container smaller than 3 ounces will fall through and contaminate glass. Objects larger than 3.5 gallons, like buckets, we get those all the time, 5-gallon buckets, play sets, any bulky plastic items have the potential to damage or to cause jams, which cause, again, shutdowns and potentially injure an employee as well while we're in there trying to clean those messes. Meeting process or contamination specification affects whether those materials are processed into a new product or the price we received. So again, when a mill receives this material or an end processor receives this material, they have a level of expectation of making sure that there isn't all the material that they're purchasing, if they're buying a number one plastic, that it's just number one plastic and it doesn't have fiber in it, that it doesn't have plastic pouches or any other object that shouldn't be in that stream. If that material has over 5% contamination, we are going to get a claim, we're going to get a rejection, and or we're going to receive a lower rate for our material. Quality plays a big part in making sure that our end product has a home. If your material is labeled as high contaminated, it's not going to be processed. You might potentially even get banned from that mill. So making sure that the level of contamination is reduced and that we do the proper separation is a huge part of what we do. Each recycling commodity is mostly independent from the other, and the market values are constantly changing. Prices go up and down all the time. The best way to deal with the volatility is to avoid it altogether. This means staying invested and not paying attention to short-term fluctuations. At current markets right now, it's probably, I haven't seen that in decades. Our milk jugs, our HT natural #2 plastics are now at a higher cost than aluminum. Aluminum was always the highest paid commodity. It's unseen, but just like they go up, they come right back down, and each commodity kind of offsets. When one goes up, demand for another goes down, and that there are various factors that play into that. Right now, the economy plays a big role into that. Like #1 plastics are used for carpeting. So if no new homes are being built, there's no need for carpeting. Demand for those items will go down. But then there's other, like metal right now is spiking as well. Aluminum is spiking as well. So it kind of correlates. It follows trends in markets, but you can never just pay attention to that and say, well, we're just going to target aluminum or we're just going to target this stream. Those 4 plastics, the aluminum, the other recyclables that we spoke about earlier, are recyclable materials that we have consistently been able to move, they've been able to send to an end product. So those are the recyclable objects that are on the guidelines that we accept, that we try to focus on. So as I explained earlier, current market prices right now, aluminum is still the highest paid. HD natural #2 plastics, your milk jugs, come in second. PET #1 plastics, your water bottles are third. Polypropylene #5 plastics, and HD color, your detergent bottles. Metal, OCC, and then at the bottom is mixed paper. But as I explained earlier, at our facility and most MRFs, fiber meaning mixed paper and OCC, make the biggest component of your inbound material. And as I explained earlier, 3,000 tons versus, I believe it was 100 of aluminum. So mixed paper and OCC generate more revenue for us than aluminum does, just on the volume of the material that we're able to recover and sell. Old corrugated cardboard, so it's just cardboard. Current technology and new technology. So as I explained earlier, current technology that we have are the sorting star screens. The star screen deck is placed at an angle, glass and other small materials screened through. That would include the small caps, the plastic straws, your plastic cutlery. That falls right through and lands with the glass, unfortunately. Bottles, cans, and other round objects fall through or roll back down because of the steep angle of the deck, and those go onto a separate sort line. So the separation of paper and cardboard as they get carried up, that's where the separation starts, is on the start screens. Optical sorters, as I explained earlier, have stored images of different types of recyclables. And when identified items reach the end of the conveyor, numerous air jets blast the material to a different sort line. And then lastly, the newer technology that we have incorporated as of last year is robotic sorters. The robots intelligently perform physical tasks of sorting, picking, and placing materials to achieve 99% accuracy and up to 80 picks per minute, which is just about what a manual sorter can do. The benefit of having that robot placed in the areas that we've placed them is it eliminates the hazards of that manual sorter coming into contact with a sharp object or needles or flammable objects or chemicals that inadvertently make it into the stream through those containers that have not been cleaned out. Decreased bale contamination and improved quality, and increased facility safety reduces time and money spent on high turnover positions as well. So one of the things that I wanted to say is that together, if we work together and we recycle, like we all have the same goal. We want to recycle more, but if we work together and do it safely, we would be able to achieve that. So it's my time.
Okay, our next speaker will be Jake Kohler. Jake began working for the Village of Glenview as an intern in 2018 while getting his master's degree. He currently serves as assistant to the village manager assigned to the Public Works Department. Come on up, Jake.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Chair. I appreciate it. That was very nice of you. As she said, I am Jay Kohler. I work for the Village of Glenview in the Public Works Department. Phil and Joe are disappointed they can't make it today. They have a board meeting, so they're just across the street over at Village Hall right now. So I'm here today to brief you on some of the programs that the Village of Glenview is decided to initiate to try to go green and try to improve our recycle image. I do ask if you have any questions to please come see me after the event. I can write them down and I can bring them back to the Public Works team and we can address them properly. I want to make sure you guys are getting the most up-to-date and accurate information for your questions. So some of the recycling programs that the Village of Glenview is currently doing right now, we have curbside recycling, similar to what Javier was saying with Groot. We have weekly curbside recycling that's provided by Groot to all single-family homes and eligible multi-family townhomes that have opted in to do the curbside recycling. Another program that we have is landscape waste and food composting. So seasonal subscriptions are available to all Groot customers for landscape waste and food composting. Landscaping and food composting into the same 95-gallon tote. Items that can be composted include fruits, vegetables, breads, grains, pasta, cereal, dairy such as cottage cheese, sour cream, yogurt, and butter. And please, no liquids. If you grab some of the handouts up on the table up there, it should show you, give you a pretty good snapshot or snippet of what can be recycled and what can't. Excuse me. Like I said, no liquids, eggshells, coffee grounds, tea leaves, grass clippings, garden vegetables, leaves, and brush. And then there's also pay-by-the-bag stickers, which are available for landscape waste, which you could purchase at a later time or a separate time. We have First Friday Recycling, which is another handout up at the table. I'm not sure if there's any left over there. I do have some with me, so if you didn't grab one, please come see me and I can get you one of those. But it kind of just basically breaks down when we have our recycling events. They're the first Friday of every month, 8 to 2 p.m. in the Village Hall main lobby. If you don't have the address, that's 2500 East Lake Avenue. And that's where you can bring your medications, your sharps, mercury-containing thermometers, wall switches, and thermostats. You could also bring American flags that need to be retired properly. We also have an annual electronics and document destruction event. This is 9 a.m. to noon on Saturday, July 16th at the Glenbrook South High School parking lot. You can get entry off Fingston Road. It's similar to the 2021 event. It's open to all Swank community residents. Eligible electronics include cable receivers, cell phones, computer monitors, desktops, notebooks, tablets, converter boxes, fax machines, keyboards, mice, MP3 players, portable digital assistants, PDAs, printers, satellite receivers, and scanners. For document destruction, you can bring up to 6 paper bags or small boxes of dry personal documents. Please remove all metal or plastic sleeves and clips. Small staples are okay, though. However, non-personal curbside eligible recycling items such as newspapers, magazines, and ads are not accepted and should be recycled with the curbside program that we have with Group. We also have a Saturday electronics recycling, and that is 9 to 11:30 every Saturday at the Swing Transfer Station. You can find that at 3 Providence Way in Des Plaines, Illinois. You don't need to wait for the annual event for electronics. This is available all year round. And then lastly, we have our holiday light and tree recycling. For holiday lights, feel free to bring those to Public Works facility. It's not really at the Public Works facility, but kind of just a little bit north in our little area where we have our contractors park. It's technically at the corner of Shermer and East Lake Avenue. And this is available from November to February every single year. And then we also have Christmas tree recycling, and I believe the Park District also accepts Christmas trees. We do, as a Public Works village, will accept Christmas trees. I'm not sure what the Park District does with them, but I know that the village and our natural resource manager is trying to set an initiative to put these Christmas trees back into nature, whether it's in the lakes surrounding the areas, just liven the beautiful landscape of Glenview. So, and like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to just come grab me after this event. I can write them down, and we can get those addressed, at your earliest convenience. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear from Ken Wexler. Ken Wexler is the park planner with the Glenview Park District. He works district-wide on the design, construction, and maintenance of all park amenities, including playgrounds, sport courts, pathways, and landscaping. He's the current team leader of the Park District, current team leader of the Park District Environmental Team. Please welcome Ken.
Thank you, Sherry. And I'd just like to recognize Sherry, Mary, and Kathy and Greener Glenview and thank them for putting this program together. The work they do is important and it makes Glenview a better community. So thank you to all of you. I just have some general comments about the Park District's recycling program and efforts to reduce waste. In all of our parks, you'll see a pair of toters. The brown one is for trash, and the blue one is for recycling. And we have the obligatory slide that shows what we do recycle, but what we also, it's been the theme of tonight, is we want to make sure people don't put their recyclables in plastic bags. And you heard from Mary and Javier how it gums up the MRF and the machinery there and disrupts their efforts. Now, we have a lot of parks and we have a lot of special events. So throughout the year, there's a large volume of trash and recycling that's generated, and our crews are constantly picking up both trash and recycling. And so we're looking for ways to reduce the quantity of trash and recycling that we handle. And you saw Christina had the inverted pyramid that at the top it said reduce. And so we started a campaign called Goal Zero Waste. So the ultimate goal is to have all the parks free of trash. That's the ultimate goal. And to achieve this, the Park District is looking for users to share in the responsibility by helping us reduce the amount of trash, by avoiding one-time use items. So we ask for your help by taking everything that you bring into the park back out with you. And you'll see this sign at special events, and you'll see this at in the parks. And it's similar to the National Park Service program, the Carry In, Carry Out, Leave No Trace program that they have. And that seeks to minimize human impacts on the environment. And they go so far as to not have any trash containers in the parks to really get the message across, where you really have to take out everything that you bring in. And we're not going so far as not to have trash containers in the parks or recycling containers. But the program helps to get the message out. It promotes reducing and reusing and encourages less wasteful practices. And for instance, like Mary showed up a reusable water bottle. We have bottle filling stations in all of the parks. We have them exterior and we have them interior locations in our facilities. And then food can be brought in recyclable or reusable containers. You could use cloth bags. You could use reusable silverware. And so there's lots of creative ways to figure out how to not generate trash in the parks. And so we appreciate your help in letting us achieve that. And then lastly, just to address Jake's topic on the Christmas tree recycling, I did have a slide, but didn't make the cut, in that we do collect all the Christmas trees that are dropped off. We have several locations throughout the Park District. And what we do is we bring them back to our shop, and we have a tub grinder that grinds them up to a specific dimension and makes mulch out of it that then we use in the parks in the shrub beds. So that's what we do with the Christmas tree recycling. And now I'll turn it back over to Sherry.
Okay, finally, time for Q&A. If Javier and Mary and Christina, if you could sit up front here. You each have some cards, and we'll just rotate the mic among you, but a couple questions before I turn the mic over to you. Javier, who is buying your baled materials as an example? Oh, got to give you the mic. And also, can you talk about why black plastic containers are a problem for you?
So Georgia Pacific is our partner. As of August 2020, Georgia Pacific is our exclusive sales agent, and they sell all of our baled commodities to different end users. That material can get turned into a clothing article, park bench, anything that can any plastic product. Aluminum cans will get turned back into aluminum. Paper and cardboard. It's either turned into chipboard or into another cardboard article again. And then the black plastic. The issue with the black plastic containers is the optical sorters. When those pictures of that material is taken, they can't differentiate the difference between the black belt, the conveyor belt, and the black plastic object itself. So it won't shoot after it. It just won't recognize it.
Sure. Would you bring this back up, the recycling slide? I think that way it'll be easier for me to refer to a couple of them. Thank you for your questions. Cables, electronics, recycling events. So the Comp2 is Swank's electronics recycler, and as long as the cables are attached to the electronics, they don't take isolated cables. Elgin Recycling will take them. There's a lot of time just to demanufacture them that they don't care to do. It's not part of what they're supposed to do under the law. So they stick to that. They can be recycled, absolutely. You can take the cables to Apt Electronics, Elgin Recycling. Oftentimes they won't even charge you for them. Salvation Army, Goodwill, all work with electronics recyclers. In fact, if you have things that aren't tubed, like a tube TV or a tube monitor, you can take, with lead and mercury, you can take those kinds of things to the places that I just talked about for no fee. You don't have to wait for an event or come over on a Saturday. What about single-use water bottles? They are. You know, they're very desirable. In fact, today at our meeting, it was said that a percentage of the water bottles that the brand owners like Coca-Cola and Pepsi want to have back to put into new bottles for recycled content are oftentimes going to clothing and carpet and plastic strapping. Leave the cap on, empty it, rinse it if it's got water. Usually don't have to rinse, right? You just empty it and put the cap back on, because what that, Javier can back me up, what that helps do is when that bottle goes in the recycling truck and it gets partially compacted, when it comes back out on the floor, it tips, it you know, scooped on a conveyor belt, it helps hold the integrity of the bottle so it doesn't get smashed, because a lot of the bottles, the plastic, are lightweight now and they can crumble in your hands. So if that bottle gets flattened, oftentimes the optical sorter will see it as a fiber and put it over in the paper pile. So it helps by leaving the caps back on now. Okay. Is clean aluminum foil suitable for recycling bin? Absolutely. So up here you can see the foil pans, and this is what you may not be able to see, but if you have the handout, you can see it on your paper. This is a foil ball, but just make sure they're clean.
Okay. So I didn't get as many questions. I don't know if that's maybe because they didn't tell you to write your questions down while I was talking, or I just covered it all so well. But one question that I did get is the 50% recycling goal. 50% of what? So that's a great question. We are looking to hit a diversion of half by weight of the materials that we discard from both our homes and our businesses. So that's a statewide number, and we're looking at the entire waste stream there. So that would be through recycling and through composting or other types of food loss prevention that we can quantify. So one of the challenges that we have with quantifying our recycling is there are a lot of different places material can go. And if we actually implement the things that hit the reuse, and reduce elements of that inverted pyramid, we really can't measure that at all because it doesn't enter our system. So we can start with a baseline and say, today we have 260,000 tons of garbage that comes out of our SWANK member communities, and we have some additional amount that's going to recycling and it's going to compost. And in 5 years, what is that total amount that we can quantify? And then are there things that we know have happened through programs that we've instituted and practices that residents have adopted that we know reduce the waste stream? It's constantly changing. It's not, you look at what you put in your cart or what you put into your garbage can in the kitchen, it's a huge mix of things. And there are a lot of factors that go into what make that up. So those targets of 50%, they're a really good number. They're a nice thing to be able to throw out, and it's a nice soundbite if we can get there. Calculating it is a nightmare. And from the standpoint of real policy and practice, don't dwell on the number as much as the practices that you engage in and the choices that you make as a consumer in how you manage your materials or what you buy, and has to be managed in the end. I only had a couple of questions, so do you want me to pass it on?
Yeah, right. So one of the questions that I got, so can you recycle shredded paper just not in bags? No, we don't want shredded paper at all in the stream. As I explained, it ends up in the glass. In the glass stream, it floats through or just flutters all around throughout the facility. And that also is very flammable and often ends up in the rafters, the beams, and hard to reach areas that can't be cleaned. And if, in the event that there is a fire, that stuff is very, very combustible and can sometimes explode if it's in the air. Yes, but it doesn't go through the facility. It doesn't go through the sorting process. That material gets sent straight to a baler. It doesn't go through the sorting process, so there isn't that material flying around the facility. Yes. Wrapping paper, as long as it's not, there's no glitter, there's no aluminum foil, no foil, or if it's just fiber paper, we can take that. Yeah. Yep. Compost. Yep. So I got one. I need some clarification. It says, what is done with non-recyclable cellulosic waste? Not sure what that is or whose question that was. Yes. Can you clarify on what you mean by cellulosic waste? Not sure what that is. Cellulosic waste. Yep. So like a film cover. No, so all the paper, all the fiber, if that's a coating on a paper fiber, all that material is going to go to a mill, and that paper is going to turn into pulp. So anything that's got a coating with any type of plastic or wax coating on it is going to cause an issue to that end processor, clog up their material, or potentially contaminate a batch of other good recyclables. Yeah, yeah, those are the only two I have.
We have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. Okay. Where can I recycle lithium batteries? Call to the numeral recycle.org. We'll list, you put in your zip code and it will list big box stores where you can take your lithium batteries. Lithium batteries look amazingly similar in size to alkaline. There's AA, there's AAA, there's 9 volt. So read the label. Alkaline batteries, one of my questions, can go in the garbage. They're benign to the environment. So right now, Glenview is not participating in SWANK's battery recycling program. I have already talked to Jake. about reinstating it just for lithium batteries. So I'll have a conversation with Phil and Joe and Jake one day soon, and maybe that will be the once a month kind of drop off that you'll be able to have for lithium batteries. Call to recycle.org. CALL, the numeral 2, recycle.org. And this information is on the agency's website under frequently asked questions. We have a lot of different household chemicals, paints, batteries, propane tanks. We have answers for all those things. So be sure to go to swank.org. Can you recycle newspaper? Absolutely, just not the plastic sleeve it comes in. That can be taken back to a retail store with plastic shopping bags. Should we not recycle paper from the shredder? That was just addressed. No, if you shred it at home, it will either should be composted or thrown away. And if you're throwing it away in the garbage, do bag it in a paper bag so it doesn't cause a party in the alley or in your front yard. Can you recycle magazines? Oh yeah, this was all on one card. Yes. Magazines are part of the paper along with cartons, junk mail, and cardboard boxes and food boxes, non-waxed.
All right, so different agencies have different rules, which is true. We do see programs being different in different communities. We have spent a lot of time standardizing our recycling education, but on the composting side, there is a lot of differences between programs that might be available to Glenview versus Northbrook versus somebody else. That has to do mostly with who the hauler is that's providing the service and what the facility is they're taking it to. So different compost facilities have different requirements. Compost is much more sensitive than recycling. So as much as we harp about the contamination in our recycling, the compost stream is much, much more sensitive. So you get the wrong items in there, it's very difficult to pull those items out, and nobody's going to want to spread garbage on their gardens or on their plants. So we have to make sure that stays clean. So those certain composters do have much more limitations and say vegetative material only, no meat, no breads, while others can take more. The other element that can be in play there, and I'm not sure that it's the case, in Glenview and Northbrook, is a city ordinance requirement and the manner in which that material is packaged. So we have a responsibility first to protect public health. That's why sanitation and garbage collection started in the first place. So we need to make sure that we are doing things safely. Your backyard composters, that's why you can't put anything but vegetative material in there, because the temperature never gets high enough to break down things that are in other dairy products or in meat products. Another question is differences between residential recycling and business recycling amounts, and whether there's more recycling happening residentially or more happening with the businesses. It really depends, and we don't have a really good handle on what the businesses are doing. Businesses all operate independently. They don't have a single contract where all the businesses are served by the same hauler. So we don't have a way to collect data. It's a very free market system, and it's proprietary information. So in general, I would say the residential sector tends to outperform the commercial sector based on areas where I have been able to look at that data. Can't say for absolute certain what's happening here, but I would guess it's the same. There are studies that could be done to figure out how much business recycling is happening, and there are probably a lot of opportunities to look at really, the low-hanging fruit of even just cardboard recycling being available to businesses on a consolidated basis. That is something that, through groups like Greener Glenview and working with the village, could be looked at for downtown business areas or certain commercial districts.
All right. Thank you to our panelists. Recycling is not the cure-all for the mountains of waste we have created in our consumer society rooted in convenience. But recycling is an important component in our effort to conserve and preserve natural resources, prevent pollution, and create a circular economy. Greener Glenview thanks tonight's speakers for providing us with the most current recycling guidelines, insight into the moving parts of the systems, and information on the Village of Glenview and Glenview Park District recycling initiatives. Let's give our speakers a big round of applause for sharing their knowledge with us. Thank you all for coming.